inside joke there because Big Chris, we call him Big Chris, obviously. I'm not a big guy, but I'm not that small either. He's 6'7", in case you needed to know. He's a monster, Maryland football player. And Chris came to the island. I met him in a retreat called Walk to Emmaus. And there's so many stories of transformation that have happened through these retreats. And I met Chris, and I was telling him about, the Walk to Emmaus changed my life. And I've seen a lot of growth in him since. But when he was on Walk to Emmaus, he's like, I'm a background guy. I don't pray. I don't do any of that. I don't pray out loud. He's like, I'm kind of a reserved guy. Like I'm happy in the kitchen, cooking, doing whatever. But I've seen him grow. And then I asked him a couple years ago, I said, you praying with your family? He started praying with his family. And then he came on another retreat. And I said, Chris, are you ready to share your testimony? He shared his testimony. And I call on him to pray. And it's just awesome to see God working in his life. And he's a bright light for sure. And that's just one of hundreds of stories of transformation have happened through the Fishers of Men Ministries. But I could go on, and I will. You might have to give me the hook. I'll be paying attention when you stand up. I know I got about a minute to go. So, I was born up here in Wilmington, and my mom was 17. I joked that we grew up together, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And at a very early age, she would give me sips of whatever she was drinking, and there would be parties in the house, and I would go around and take little sips. I was a little baby lush, like 2, 3 years old, 4 years old. Some of my first memories were drinking. And this progressed, for me till my teenage years. And then I found a shoebox full of weed in the house, started smoking that, and then, started getting arrested and selling drugs and buying drugs. And we moved to Dover, and I would hang out on the strip, Kirkwood Street, and just madness and lunacy. And when I was 16, Beastie Boys came out. We gotta fight for your right to party. And that, I was like, da-na-na-na. And that's what I did. I just, I thought this is just what people do. And there was no God in my house. It was a party, like my grandparents, and then it went to my parents, and then then I just picked up from the time I was 4 or 5 years old till the time I was 19, it was just game on, and I just thought that's what people did, and there was no, I had really no understanding of God. I thought that the only prayers I prayed were the why me prayers, like, God, why me? Why, my biological father wasn't in my life. Why don't I have a dad? I had a stepfather, but it was always like, I felt like he was there for my mom and not for me. Just always this why me pity party that I had growing up. And so that carried on into, more and more, self-medicating, right? Because when I was drinking or smoking weed or doing coke or whatever it is that I was doing, tripping on acid, I was in a different place. And I just wanted to escape reality however I could, and those are the things I did. And and it worked for a while, right? I mean, I think everybody in this room can remember where, it works for a while, but until it doesn't. It's the big lie. It's like, take this, it'll make you feel better. And for a minute, it does, but then you need more and more of it, and then you never quite feel as good as you did the first time you did it. And I got to a place after getting arrested many times and kicked out of the house where I was homeless, I was addicted, I couldn't keep a job, and I just was sick and tired of being sick and tired. We've heard that so many times in the rooms now. Went home to my parents' house, and I kicked the door open. And I went inside, and it was 2 days before Christmas, and I just was ready to end it. And I looked under the tree. There were no presents for me. I've been kicked out, right? I was like, I was just thinking, I'm going to get something and get out. Well, the police came, took me up to Smyrna prison. And, all the times I was arrested, I'd never been locked up. My parents always bailed me out. And so right before this happened, this was kind of the end of a 60-day, just getting high and drunk and using, for a couple months. But before that happened, it was Friday the 13th of October, 1989, and I thought, I'm just unlucky, right? Some people are lucky, and I'm not. And so I was like, Friday the 13th is a good day to die. So I was going to kill myself. I made a plan. I was going to go. I was living in my parents' basement. I was going to go up to the medicine cabinet, get all the pills I could find, and just take them and just go to sleep and not wake up. I thought, what's the point of all this? I've been, trying to get high, and kept using, and to, like I said, just wasn't working anymore. It wasn't fixing anything. And I got to this place where I was like, let's just end it. And so I was walking to the medicine cabinet, and I just stopped and started looking at myself in the mirror, and I had a conversation with myself. And I said, what is wrong with me? Why do I want to kill myself? Why, Frank, what are you thinking? And all of a sudden I just started counting blessings. I didn't know they were blessings, but I just said to myself, I said, you can walk, you can talk, you can see, you can hear. Like, you're not the smartest guy, but you're not illiterate. I just started being grateful for little things, having fingers and toes, and, that I could take a breath. And I had a little bit of gratitude and a whole lot of guilt. And that guilt just came over me, and I went back to my bed. I dropped to my knees in my parents' basement, and they had sent me down to the basement because they didn't want to see me anymore. They didn't want to be around me. They're like, you just go in and out of the basement. So I'm in that basement by myself. There was no pastor. There was no worship music. It was just me and God just hammering it out. And I dropped to my knees and I said, God, please help me. God, forgive me. And I pleaded and I begged for forgiveness because I was such a wretch. I had a girlfriend who had an abortion. I felt like a murderer. I thought, man, my mom had me when she was 17. My girlfriend was 17. Here I've killed this baby. I took no responsibility for that whatsoever. And this overwhelming guilt was just there. And when I dropped to my knees and I prayed and I asked God to just begged and pleaded, Lord, I'm sorry. God, forgive me for being, a drug abuser, an abusive boyfriend, a terrible son, and awful brother, and just, all this crap that I had, this weight of the world on me. When I dropped to my knees and I said, God, forgive me, it was like he just reached down and just patted me on the head. It was like, I got you. It's going to be okay. And I just felt this, I didn't even know what the Holy Spirit was, but the Holy Spirit came over me. And I had, this most natural high that I could ever feel. It was just incredible. Drugs never did anything like that for me. And I jumped up off the floor excited, like, whoa, what just happened? Like I was electrocuted. My hairs are standing up right now thinking about that moment. And I had a new addiction. But then I called my grandmother up. I'm like, Mama, you won't believe this. I said, God's for real. She was like, yeah, he is, And she wasn't a real, staunch believer, but she didn't dispute it. And I said, well, Mama, God's real, and everything has a reason. What are drugs for? She said, well, drugs heal sick people. I was like, cool. The whole world's sick. We're going to heal everybody. So for 60 days, I tried to get everybody high I could. And that didn't work out too well. And that's when I went and kicked the door open, go inside, and no presents under the tree. The police come, take me away. End up in Smyrna 2 days before Christmas. And I'm thinking, all right, God, what's next? What's next? And I stopped talking to myself so much. And we've been talking about this a lot with some of my brothers. It's like, who are we talking to when we speak, right? When our thoughts in our head, are we talking to ourselves or are we talking to Him? And, I've talked to guys like, well, I pray in the morning, I pray at night. I was like, well, who are you talking to the rest of the day? And so back at that time, I started, just having a conversation with God. Okay, God, what's next? And I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. And I tune out and check out and, looking on Facebook or whatever. But I'm like, God, reveal something to me. So spent this time in Smyrna. And 2 days before Christmas, a pastor brought a pocket Bible and told me to read the book of John. And I did, and I read about Jesus, and I had questions. And I didn't really, pursue it a whole lot, but, I spent 7 months in work release in Georgetown and went to rehab August 2nd of 1990. And the day before rehab, I'd been working on a construction site, and the guys were like, well, you're going to rehab tomorrow. You're never going to get to drink again. You might as well just have one more beer. And I've been waiting for this bed in rehab for 7 months, and I was sober the whole time I was in work release, but I didn't know about recovery. I didn't know about AA. I had no clue of the 12 steps or any of that. And I said, yeah, I guess tomorrow's it. I might as well have this one last beer. And I chugged that thing. And it was good. And I was like, if I wasn't going to rehab the next day, if I wasn't reporting back to work release that night, I probably would have got a real good one in. But I chugged that one beer, and I went to rehab August 2nd, 1990. And I go into the rehab, and I tell the counselor, I'm like, I'm never drinking again, never doing drugs again. She said, you keep talking like that, we're going to send you back to jail. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought that was the whole point of rehab. And she said, no. She said, all you can do is stay sober today. You can't change yesterday. You can't tell me what you're going to do next week, next year, whatever. All you have to do is stay sober today. And it just really simplified things for me. I was only 20 years old. And I'm in rehab and thinking, how am I going to do this the rest of my life? She says, all you got to do is stay sober today. I was like, well, I can do that. I've been doing it for 7 months, And so that was my last drink. That was 34 years ago. Coming up August 2nd, I'll be celebrating 34 years of sobriety. And I wish I could tell you that, life's been perfect since, but it hasn't. It's been better. I haven't been arrested or been in a fight. I haven't got my teeth knocked out since I've been sober. It's pretty cool. I was talking to a friend of mine last week. He was like, when he decided to get sober, and somebody was like, I got to give all this up? I get sober and recover? You mean I got to give all this up? And they're like, hey, you got to give up getting arrested, being in jail, being homeless, being sick, being broke. Like, I got to give all that up? Really? It's like, it seems like such an easy choice, but I don't know why we have such a hard time making it, and I see it, and I'm like, and I see the cycle that I went through for a long time. I mean, I started getting arrested at 13 years old, and, kept it up for 6 years. I mean, 19 is when I finally, got locked up, and 20 got sober. So, I get it. I understand it. It's a process, but so I had this experience, and I get out of rehab, and I do whatever they tell me in AA. I start going to AA, and my sponsor says, "Hey, don't get a serious girlfriend. Stay sober for a year," and I changed the way I spoke. I used to everything out of my mouth was that, and I stopped doing that, and I just tried to live a simple life. I got a little apartment. My aunt and uncle took me in for a while, and I got a little apartment. I got a job. Went to work every day. It's cool in recovery because we have a celebration when somebody just acts normal, And I just acted normal, like I didn't go out and lose my mind every night like I used to. I stayed home, watched TV. It was like, woo, like that was a big deal for me because I never did that before. I paid a bill, my parents didn't have to bail me out of jail. It was cool, So anyway, I just did that for a year, and then I prayed, and I developed a relationship with a God of my own understanding. Okay, and I was being blessed. I really was. I was, I prayed for a good wife. I prayed, I didn't want just a hookup anymore. I wanted a woman that was beautiful and intelligent and, college graduate. I didn't want a train wreck like me. I wanted a good girl. And I prayed for that, and God gave that to me. And then I wanted a son, and we had a son, and I wanted a house, and we bought a house and put up the white picket fence, and the American dream just started coming true in my life. And then I said, well, what more could I have? I said, I got a son. Let me have a daughter, and God gave me a daughter. And it's just like everything I asked for, I was just being blessed with it. I was just staying sober, living a good life. And, it was like, what else could I have? I was like, man, it'd be nice to have my own business. So I got into real estate, and I started selling houses and buying properties and getting rentals, and became one of the top realtors in the country under 30 years old. I was on Realtor Magazine, top 30 under 30 in 1999. I was 29 years old. And, just getting blessing after blessing after blessing. And then, I wasn't even praying for this one, but my brother-in-law calls me up one day. He says, Frank, how'd you like to buy an island? I'm like, yeah, I got money I don't know what to do with. Let's do that. So we go to look at this island, and I'm like, well, what's the name of this island? And he had a name picked out. He found it on his birthday. He wanted to call it Birthday Island. And my wife and her sister, their main name was Spicer. They want to call it Spice Island. And I was outvoted no matter what. And it's my last name's Parks. It's at the end of Roland Parks Road. And we're over there on the island. I asked the owner, what's the name of this island? He says, well, it's always been called Frank's Island. And I wasn't even praying for that one. It was just like, cool, okay, we got a name. And they were like, oh, we want to change that. And they asked him, how do we change the name? They wanted to change it. And he's like, well, we tried. You can't. It's in the maps and deeds. Goes back hundreds of years or whatever. He's like, there's no way to change it. It's all, you look on Google Maps, you'll see it's Frank's Island down in Deal Island, Maryland. And so anyway, we had this island, and just, I had boats and jet skis and bought land and four-wheelers, and it was really kind of sickening how much how good life was, and I thought, man, it can't get any better than this. Well, then the real estate market crashed, and I started feeling like I was going to lose everything. And my wife got sick from meningitis. She had tooth infection. She went to the hospital. And I thought she was going to die. And I'm starting to make deals with God. I'm like, God, she's a good one. She was going to church at the time. I wasn't. I would avoid church like the plague. I was at home in the rooms, But at that point, I wasn't even really going to AA anymore because I was, trying to be upstanding citizen in the community. I didn't want people to know I had an addiction or had ever been arrested. Like, they might not buy a house for me if they find out I'm an ex-convict, So I was just putting on this show, and it was just, there were a lot of blessings, don't get me wrong, and my children, I got to spend time with them, and, my family, and I really focused on them, but I wasn't giving back. It was a very selfish faith, and I was just, God was just giving me everything I ever wanted or thought I wanted, and then at the end of it, it was like, man, I have all this stuff, but, something's still missing. Something's still missing. And then the market turned, and I'm thinking, I'm going to lose everything that I gained, and I started thinking about suicide again. And it's like, what in the world is going on? I told my wife, I'm like, I said, honey, I'm getting these crazy thoughts, and she was in the church, and she lied to me. She told me this lie. She said, well, there's this thing, it's a retreat called the Walk to Emmaus. She says, and I really want to go, and I think it'd be good for you, but I can't go unless you go. And she had nearly died, and I'm making a deal with God, and so I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I'm like, I don't want to go sing Kumbaya with all these, Jesus freaks, and I go on this weekend, man, and what was cool about it was it wasn't a pastor preaching. Like, when I go to church, I go to church now, but I feel like the pastors are, nothing against pastors, but I get more out of testimonies and hearing somebody's heart change and what God did in their life, and I wish church had more of that, and that really inspired me on this weekend, because it was just regular guys. There were pastors there too, and it was Spirit-filled weekend, and I just, and what was missing in my life was Christ. I had a God of my own understanding, but that can be a dangerous thing, because if we're making God to be what we want him to be, is it God or is it us? And here he sent this example to follow, and I wasn't following it. It was all about me and my island and the boats and the jet skis, and if I get a bigger boat, I'll be happy. If I get a bigger house, I'll be happy. If I get this, I get a son, get a daughter. Like everything was about getting the next thing, and there was, I wasn't content with what I had, and I didn't have Christ at all. And so when I went on this retreat, and these guys were sharing their life stories, and there were just too many coincidences. I call them God instances now, because these guys were sharing things that I could relate to, and I was just like, wow. And Big Chris's dad was there, and he started talking about addiction and, using alcohol and drugs, and, just how it screwed his life up. That was the first speaker. And I was like, wow, that sounds familiar, And so I was just drawn in, and the love these guys showed me on this weekend. And so I got to go back and serve on another weekend 3 years later. And the whole time I'm going, I'm like, man, I would love to come back and share my story, and, be able to help somebody like I was helped on that weekend. And so it took 3 years. I finally got to go back, and they said, okay. And I love to talk and share, but they said, okay, you're going to be in the kitchen. And I'm like, dang it. I want to do more of that. But it was like, he put me in the kitchen with another guy named Ken Savage. And Ken and I were on the background together. And, we're both like trying to, like we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're just glad to be there and be a part of it. But both of us are thinking, man, we want to share about what God's done in our life. And he was in recovery too. And we're staying up one night, hanging out and talking, and I said, man, wouldn't it be cool to have an Emmaus type weekend for guys that are in recovery? We have testimonies in small groups, and but we do fishing and crabbing and jet skiing, just cool stuff. And I didn't even share that part yet, but we're talking about this retreat, and he said, man, I've had this vision of doing a retreat on this really remote place, and it's got a big marsh, and it's on the water, and he starts describing the island, and he didn't even know we had this island. And I go to get my phone out, and I show him. I'm like, is this it? And he says, that's what I've been seeing. And we just met, like on, working on this weekend together. And so he came up with this plan, and we call it Fishers of Men because we just invite guys that are in the rooms of recovery. We invite guys from AA and NA and, recovery houses and, Halo and Salisbury and homeless shelters. And we just bring them down to the island, and we just share testimonies. We have small groups, and we share Jesus with them. Because, I believe that the 12 steps are incredible. But for me, that spiritual awakening happened when I gave my life to Christ. And I started following him. And I stopped making God to be what I want him to be. Because God sent the answer. He sent the example. And I fought that. I challenged it. 17 years I stayed sober without Jesus. And I came to the same place of wanting to die as I did when I was using and abusing drugs. And so when I got to this place where, I was started sharing Christ and sharing what Jesus did. And I'm having this moment where I'm feeling like I'm going to lose everything. And I asked one of the guys in my office, I'm like, man, everything's going, like we're losing agents. I'm having trouble paying the bills. I'm like, man, could it get any worse? He said to me, he looked right at me, he said, what are you talking about? You're not hanging on a cross. And then all of a sudden it was like, I understood, why God sent his son to die like that. It takes away all my excuses. And I couldn't understand it for a long time. I was like, if God's a loving God, why would he let his son go to the cross and get whipped and stripped naked and beaten bloody, stabbed in the side, spit upon, slapped, ridiculed, nailed to the cross? Why would a loving God do that to his only child? Like, it didn't make sense to me until that moment when he said, what are you talking about? You're not hanging from a cross. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I get it now. And it takes away all my excuses. And he did that so I didn't have to. He took my punishment. He took what I deserved. I don't think I've had a bad day since. I've had bad moments, I'm not going to lie, but as soon as I have that bad moment, I remember that cross and what he did. I'm like, man, that's all you got, devil? Go get somewhere. You can take that somewhere else. And I'm just at peace, and I know that I can handle whatever he throws at me. Whatever the enemy throws at me, I know I can handle it because I'm not hanging on a cross. No matter how bad I think it is, when I look at what he went through, man, how good do we all have it? We're sitting here in the AC. We're going home to a nice, cozy bed. Even my worst day in the streets wasn't anything like that. And so, we started these retreats 14 years ago in 2010, and we had 17 men on the first weekend, and they've grown. We were doing them once a year for the first 5 years, and then we started doing twice a year, and then we grew to 30 and 50, and our last retreat we had 66 men. And one of the retreats, I had gotten baptized through that process, and after I went to Emmaus and I came home and I wanted to show God that I was all in. And I went to my pastor, and I was in a Methodist church. He said, well, you've already been, I was christened, baptized as a baby. He said, we don't rebaptize you. So I was like, I really want to go all in. He's like, well, you're good. And I was like, no, I want to go all in. So I was telling a friend about it. He says, well, I'll baptize you. We'll go. So we went out behind my house to live on the river in Seaford. He dunked me in, and I came out, and I just felt different. And we're on the next retreat, and I thought about offering baptism on the retreat. And So I was praying about it, and this young man comes up to me and says, Frank, I want to get baptized. I was like, cool. I said, well, we're going to church tomorrow. I'll have a pastor come back and do the baptism. He says, no, I want you to do it. I said, well, I'm not a pastor. I'm just a real estate agent. But, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But, and I was like, well, I was praying about it. And his name was John, too, which is ironic. But so I was like, all right. And I offered, we offered baptism, and we had 2 other guys come forward. We had 3 baptisms on that weekend, and we've been doing baptisms there ever since. We've had over 100 men and women get baptized on the island. The last retreat, we had 66 men. We had 6 baptisms there, and it was an incredible weekend. And we had, came back to my church. And I told my pastor, I was like, we had 3 baptisms on the island. He says, he said, well, who did it? I said, well, I did. He says, well, you're not qualified to do that. And I said, but the scriptures don't say, go and make disciples of all nations and then, go get a degree at seminary and then go baptize. It just says, just go, right? It just says, go, make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. All the other stuff, we're called to be fishers of men. That's what Jesus says, come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And so that's what we teach on the island. And I don't care what you do. I want you to really think about who am I fishing for? Who am I discipling? Who am I trying to help get to that place of baptism? So I'm just want to inspire you. Like, if he can take a knucklehead like me, ex-convict, drug addict, alcoholic, and bless me to be able to help baptize people. And then it's cool now because people that I've helped baptize, they're bringing their family and baptizing them. It's a beautiful thing. And we're seeing this ripple effect grow, and it's just a beautiful thing. So, I just want to encourage everybody in here today to just go. Just go. Don't wait. Don't think I'm not qualified, because none of us are. He qualifies the chosen. He didn't go and get the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all the people who had all the biblical knowledge of the day. He went and grabbed the fisherman and the tax collector and the sinner, and he qualified them. And they're the ones that grew the church. So, I really want you to think about that and pray about that. And I hope somebody in here tonight is inspired to just go. Just go. So that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share. Oh, I forgot to. Our retreats, if you'd like to come, hold on, I'll come back. I forgot to share this. Our retreats are on our website. They're listed at fisherofmen.us. So if you just Google Fisher of Men Foundation or fisherofmen.us, if you'd like to attend or you know somebody that's struggling, we don't like to preach to the choir. We want to find those guys that are really having that spiritual struggle. Maybe they don't believe in Christ, or they don't have a relationship with God, and they're trying to figure it out. We just want to bring them down there and love on them, show them a good time. We fish and crab and jet ski and play cornhole, and we have a lot of fun, but there's a spiritual experience that happens there that words can't describe, as Zach was saying. It's a moving experience, and never had anybody come to the island and say, man, never heard anybody say that yet. And I'll put a little plug in. That's a picture of the island right there at the top, and I've written a book. We've written a book with a lot of help from guys and their stories. So it's my story, but also stories of a lot of the men that have been on the island. It'll be out in a couple of months, so if you remember that, and I'll share it with Zach. It's called Saved by Chance. The island is in Chance, Maryland, and so there's no charge for the events. And we have 3 more men's retreats this year. We have August 2nd through the 4th, which will be my anniversary weekend, 34 years. And then we have October and November, the first weekend of each month. And then we have our first women's only weekend, September 27th or 28th and 29th. It's just an overnight because it's their first time. And so if you know any women that want to come, just go to the website. There's a sign-up sheet there, and you know, we're just blessed to be able to spread the good news. Thanks, Zach.